Good day everyone, this is Mr. H, the Fine Arts teacher. In this video I'm going to be showing you a demonstration of how to create a tessellation using a technique called rotation. This is the second of these videos, and this is the one that's a little bit harder, but not yet the most difficult. So we're going to switch to the downwards view and begin our demonstration now. To begin our demonstration today, I'm going to be giving you a list of different materials that you're going to want to have on hand in order to complete this assignment. The first is that you're going to need a 3x3 piece of cardstock. What I typically will use is just a 3x5 index card and then cut it down so that the length and the width are the same, in other words 3 inches. You're also going to need a pair of scissors. You're going to need a pencil. You're going to need a couple pieces of tape. You're going to need a ruler and an eraser. It could be a pencil top eraser, it could be a chunk of eraser like this. And if you're planning on working in color, you're also going to want to have colored pencils near you as well. We will also need 3 pieces of paper. We're going to need one that is just a piece of computer paper. Well, let's put it this way. You'll need one for sure, maybe 2, and I'll explain why you might want to use a second one during the demonstration. And you're also going to need a 9x12 sheet of paper. So with that in mind, go ahead and make sure you've got all your materials, and then whenever you're ready, you may begin, or you may continue with the rest of this video. So we're going to start out by using our 3x3 index card. And so for this assignment, you're going to be drawing a design that goes from corner to corner on 2 neighboring sides. So starting at one corner, draw whatever you want. It could be a nice organic line like this. It could be a geometric line like this. Doesn't really matter. The only thing I would suggest not doing is making it super complex or having a bunch of little teeny details or anything like that. Or I should say, and also don't make it so it goes too far into the box. So once you've got those 2 lines drawn, organic, geometric, or a combination of both, it doesn't matter, you're going to be cutting them out. It's not super important that you cut precisely at the line, as long as you are making a design that goes from corner to corner. So once you've got your pieces cut off, you're going to be putting them back where they came from, just so you can make sure that something didn't accidentally get flipped over. And in this case, it's easier to tell if they got flipped over because you can see the lines on one side that wouldn't be on the other side. Now, you do need to make sure that you did not cut any of these pieces right here into more than one piece. So you didn't want to have it like get broken down into like 3 or 4 pieces, because it makes the next step a little harder when it comes to tracing. So whenever you've got your 2 pieces done, you're going to go ahead and move it over to the nearest uncut side. So this one is going to get moved over to here, and this one's going to get moved over to here. And we're going to tape those down nice and securely. So I'm just going to grab a piece of tape that's about the same length as one of those sides, and I've got to make sure that it's not overlapping over each other. In other words, one piece doesn't go on top of another like this. I've also got to make sure that there's no gaps between the pieces. So we're going to make sure that the corners line up nicely with each other without any gaps or overlapping, and then tape it down once you've got it adjusted beautifully. Now I'm going to purposefully make a little bit of tape go past the edge of the shape, just so I can show you what to do if that happens. We go ahead and do the same thing on to the other side here. So I'm lining up my 2 corners with each other and then taping it down. Now, if you look carefully, you can see that there's a little piece of tape here and here and here that went past the edge of the shape. So if that happens on yours, it's important. You do need to cut it off. So I'm going to trim off the little pieces of tape that went past the edges. If you can fold it back, yeah, that's fine. You can also fold it back too. If it's on a curve, typically you've just got to cut it off because it's a little hard to fold it back on a curve. So once you have any little pieces of tape that were going past the edge of the shape removed, then it's time to grab one of your pieces of computer paper, and we're going to move it right over like this so we can trace around it. Now you want to make sure that you choose whatever direction you want to have this faced in. So if you want to have it facing like this or like this, it doesn't matter which way it's rotated. That's kind of up to you. And now we're going to start tracing around it. And you can start on any side you want, but it's important to be precise. Make sure your pencil is coming directly up to the edge of the shape, and trace around all 4 sides. So once you've traced it around it the first time, oh, looks like I missed a part right there, so I'm just going to put it back where it was. And I'm just going to get that little part I skipped by accident. Oh. All right, now what you're going to do is you're going to move it over, and you're going to rotate it until this shape lines up with this. In other words, you're going to figure out which one of the 4 sides lines up with the side, or with that side of the shape you'd already traced, and then you're going to trace around it one more time. Now, I don't have to trace the left-hand side, and I shouldn't, because it's already been drawn. I'm just going to trace around the other 3 sides. So I'm going to move it down, and I'm going to rotate it until the sides line up with each other again, and I'm going to trace again. And then I'm going to rotate again, so that this shape and this edge line up with each other. Okay, so now that I've done that, I've got to decide what I want to draw on the inside. Now there's 2 ways you can go with this. If you're looking at the shape and you immediately see something that you feel is recognizable about the shape, if you see it looks like a face or a fish or a dog or something, whatever, it doesn't matter what it is, as long as it's age and school appropriate, you can draw that. But if you're looking at the shape and you're kind of going, I don't know what this looks like, it doesn't look like anything to me, then you can choose whatever you want to draw on the inside. So you kind of take a moment and look at it and ponder it and decide if there is anything you recognize in this, and if not, draw something. Whatever that is up to you. So you can go ahead and start creating 4 ideas, 1 idea inside of each one of these boxes. 2 or maybe even 3 or all 4 of them could be exactly the same concept but with small changes, or you could have some of them being similar and some of them being completely different. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start to design something, because as I'm looking at it right now, I don't really see that it feels like something recognizable to me. So I'm just going to start drawing something, and I'm thinking maybe some sort of underwater world. So I'm going to draw like a starfish and maybe seashells or something like that. Okay, and then let's come up with some more ideas. So what else could I have on the bottom of the ocean? Maybe I could draw a crab. All right, and what if I wanted something completely different down here? What if I want something that has nothing to do with the ocean at all? Could it? All right, so I don't know exactly what that's supposed to be, but some sort of a goblin-y looking character wearing a wrinkled hat, maybe? I don't know. All right, and then I can come up with another idea for over here. It almost feels like a lion face. Maybe I could make it into the head of a lion. Okay, so I've now created 4 different ideas for my tessellation shape that I'd created. And now what we're going to be doing is we're going to grab our final paper, and we're going to be drawing a grid on that final paper that's going to be a 3 by 3 grid. Now, when I do my 3x3 grid and all the marks to help me get it started, I'm going to be drawing them very lightly. And the reason why, or you should be drawing them very lightly. And the reason why is because all the lines of this grid are going to be going away. So you need to draw them a lot lighter than I am because you need to make sure that you can erase them. I've got to draw darker because I've got to be able to see what I'm doing on the paper, or you've got to be able to see what I'm doing on the paper through the camera. So the first thing we got to do is we got to make sure that this first line of the ruler lines up with the edge of the paper. Depending on the angle of the camera, it actually may not look like they're lining up, but I'm looking right down upon it right now, and it does line up perfectly. So what you need to make sure that you're doing when you're making your first line of the ruler line up with the edge of the paper is look directly down upon the paper from above, and then do the same thing when you go to make these marks at 3 and 6 inches. So we're going to make 3 and 6 inch marks on the left and right side of the paper if you've got it faced this way, in other words on the short sides. So I'll move my ruler over to the other side, I'll line up the first line of the ruler with the edge of the paper, and I'll again make marks at 3 and 6 inches while looking down upon the ruler. Now, when you go to do the marks on the other sides, go ahead and do the same thing. The only difference is that you're going to be making marks at 3 inches, 6 inches, and 9 inches. Now, it is important that you make these marks on all 4 sides. So sometimes people just put them on 2 of the sides and then they try to draw the lines across. The problem is if you don't have anything to line your ruler up with down here, there's very little chance that your lines will be perfectly straight up and down. So I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing on all 4 sides, and that way your lines are really precisely in the right location without being crooked. It's absolutely critical that that happen on this drawing. Alright, now that I've got the marks on all 4 of my sides, I'm going to connect them together using my ruler, and the easiest way to do that is just to put your pencil on one of the marks, slide your ruler up to it, rotate until you get to your other mark on the opposite side, and then draw your line. As long as you didn't feel your pencil tip move, it'll work great for you. So again, pencil tip on one of the marks, slide your ruler up to it, rotate your ruler until you get to the other mark. If you did not feel your pencil tip move, then you know you're in the right spot and you should draw your line. You're going to do that for all the marks horizontally and vertically. So when you are ready to begin tracing your shape out onto this paper, what you're going to do is you're going to fold back those 2 taped on sides and you're going to line up those 2 sides with either the edge of your paper and one of your lines, or you're going to line it up with 2 of the lines, or you're going to line it up with 2 of the edges. It just depends on how you want it to be rotated. And the reason, and you can be able to figure that out by just looking at the drawings that you did, figuring out which ones you want to copy, and then rotating it so it goes in that direction. So if I want to do these 2, then I probably want my card to be faced in this direction because that's the direction that was traced out in, right? So I'll go ahead and line up my card with the taped on pieces folded in so that those flat uncut edges line up with the top of the paper in this case and with one of my lines, and then I'll unfold them and then I will trace them over, but I'm double checking, am I really lining up perfectly with the sides? And it looks like now I am. And then I don't have to trace around this side because it's off the paper, I just have to trace around the other 3 sides. Now, you can trace this lightly. You're better off tracing lightly instead of dark, because if you trace dark and you go to color this piece in, it's entirely likely that this pencil mark will actually mix with your colored pencils, and those brighter, prettier colors may end up getting dirty. The other reason why you might want to draw light is because if you decide to use a pen to outline, pen doesn't like to absorb into paper if your pencil marks are too dark. So if you got nice light pencil marks, the pen will absorb into the paper without any problems. If your pencil marks are too dark, you may end up having to erase them lighter so that the pen will absorb into your paper properly. There's one little area right there where it didn't get traced. There we go. Oh, over there too. All right, now once we are done with tracing it out the first time, we are going to go ahead and fill up the paper with these tracings. So all you have to do is just rotate it in whatever direction it takes in order to make a cut edge line up with one of the lines that you'd already drawn. I am going to fold those pieces inwards until I've got it lined up with my grid lines or the edge of the paper, depending on the rotation. And then I'm going to unfold. Now you'll notice that I'm a little bit off over here. See how this shape isn't quite meeting up perfectly with that line that I had drawn? I'm going to ignore that. I'm just going to line it up with the grid lines or the edge of the paper, and I'm going to draw on all the sides except for the one that's already present. So even though there is a slight bit off as we get over to this corner over here, I'm just going to ignore it. And the reason why is because if you keep lining it up with something and one of those lines is a little off, things are going to get more and more off the further you get away. So ignore the little differences if they ever happen, and just continue to trace around all the sides except the one that's already drawn. So I'm going to go ahead and finish tracing around our other two sides here. And then I'm going to rotate again as I move over to the next box. So each time you move to a new box, you've just got to rotate until the edge of the shape that you've cut out lines up with one of the lines you've already drawn. And in this case, it looks like I need to rotate it this way because these two sides are going to align. As you can see, I'm now lining it up with the top of the paper in one of the grid lines. So you've just got to trace this side and this side since this one's off the paper. And then I'll rotate it again when I move to the next side. All right, so now that I've got it all finished, I'm just taking a quick look around and I'm seeing if there's any parts that I'd missed, and it looks like I missed part of a line right there. So I'm just going to rotate it around until I get into that direction again. I'm going to line it up with the grid lines again, and then unfold and just get that one little part that I missed. Oh, didn't get it yet. Okay, and your next step after that is just to erase all the grid lines. And remember, you don't need to darken these lines. If you want dark lines, then get a pencil, or sorry, get a pen from me, or use a pen that you have. I suggest a roller ball or a gel pen though, not a ballpoint pen. If you're not sure what the difference is or which one you have, just ask me. Ballpoint pens never really dry, so you're better off using a roller ball or a gel pen. Now that we've got this all created, we're going to be taking a look at our examples, and we are going to be choosing the two that we want to use. And in this case, I decided that I wanted to choose, I don't know, I'm kind of second guessing my choice. I'm actually thinking I might use these ones. I think that they may be just a little bit cuter. So yeah, maybe I will choose to do these ones. All right, ladies and gentlemen, so apparently my camera did not record a large segment of the demonstration that I'd filmed about the creation of our rotation tessellation. So as a result, we are unfortunately missing all of the kind of working process of how I created it. So I'm going to go ahead and summarize by just pointing out what I'd done and how I did it, and that will be the end of this video, I guess. So when we left off, I had discussed how I decided to use the lion and the goblin character in order to create this design. And so what I ended up doing was I drew all of the goblins that were right side up first, so these two, and then what little amount would be visible right over here and right over here. And then afterwards I flipped around my paper, and that way it was easier for me to create that same design for the ones that were upside down. So the reason why I did it that way was because it's very hard to think upside down. So better to flip around your paper, and that way, if you're using a rotation technique, you don't have to think upside down. You just rotate your paper and continue drawing the same way. Afterwards, I did the lions the same way. All the ones that were right side up to me I drew, and then I flipped it around in order to draw the ones that were upside down from that other position. So after you get done with sketching them all out, verify that they all look exactly the same or as close as you can make them, and then you would start working on your color. One thing that you want to do when you're working with color is to create a color pattern. So make all of one design, in my case lions for instance, the same set of colors, and make all of that other design the same set of colors. What you don't want to do is just use a random assortment of colors or try to create another pattern using color, because it's just going to end up making your piece look less cohesive as a whole. So that's the end of this demonstration, and if you have any questions or any problems, feel free to let me know in class. Thank you very much. Have a great day.